Hi everyone, this is Christina, also known as Cozy Librarian Gal. I hope everyone has been doing well on this fine afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are. Sit back, relax, and grab any refreshing beverage or anything you are doing. Currently, as I'm recording this, it is currently raining, so if you hear any raining background noises, that is why. Today we are here with our daily segment called Readers Experience Cozy Time. This is a segment where I, Cozy Librarian Christina, get the chance to read your reader forms where you talk about yourself as a reader by discussing the genres you like. What do you do with your leisure time? What types of stories or any form of entertainment you enjoy? What do you not like in your stories? And so much more. Essentially, this is all about you. Again, you can submit this form through the library website link, which will be provided down below, and you may get the chance to be featured in a future podcast episode. I'm so glad I picked this one, and you can follow along with me on this journey as well as a librarian or as a casual listener to see what you can come up with and where you're finding your suggestions. This has helped to promote the reading experience within libraries, and you can practice by following along with me. Now, if you're a new listener, you might be wondering, Cozy Librarian Gal, Christina, what is the reader experience and what are you talking about? I shall give you a brief summary, but I highly recommend reading the article Reading Experience Librarianship, Working with Readers in the 21st Century by Karen Dolly, Clarissa Vanier, and Lindsay Douglas. They describe reading experience librarianship as, quote, account not only for the characteristics of reading matters that the reader seems to be interested in, but also for the reading context of their lives, and most importantly, the kind of reading experience sought, end quote. They also described in their article, as I have here, that it just, quote, types of leisure activities including but not limited to engagement with cinema, art, music, hobbies, sports, and travel. And understanding the appeal as an amalgam of variables related to readers to the context of readers' lives and the characteristics of reading and other leisure materials or activities, end quote. So, without further ado, let us open up this chapter with our reader, which is Alice L. If you're new listening to this podcast, we break down into usually 3 sections. However, now we'll do 4 portions for this episode. Ooh, it makes it extra special. So, we will describe summary of what the reader submitted, my overall thoughts of the submission with some advantages and disadvantages, some tools that we may have used to find our future suggestions. Then we'll discuss about the form itself that has been submitted. That is the new added 4th portion to this episode. Currently, the library is working on a process of creating this form, so it will provide an even further detailed reader experience response. And since you guys are my daily listeners, you get the little glimpse to see what we're kind of working on. I got the form printed out here with other materials for this podcast, so if you hear any paper shuffling ASMR sounds, that is why. And if you enjoy ASMR, I sure do, so I do not mind that. But of course, if you hear paper shuffling, that is me. So I wrote some notes and some highlights on my paper because I have it all printed down here. But now let us get to know our reader, which is Alice. First of all, thank you, Alice, so much for submitting the form. We really appreciate you and anyone who does. We hope this will be a fun and exciting portion of you submitting your form. Now, let us go over what's been submitted on the form itself. Just a quick disclaimer, though, that Alice did check off the box to the option of having her online submission to be a part of a future podcast episode if it was chosen. This does not have to apply to everyone, but when you do fill out the form, you do have the option, if you wish, to be possibly part of the future podcast episode. So, like I said, I have the form right here. We're just going to go overall and skip through the form. We're not going to go into detail yet. That is for the next segment of the podcast. So let's just go over and skim the highlighted points. So we have our reader, which is Alice. Alice jotted down 3 genres for this form. So we have horror, mystery or crime fiction, romance. Though Alice did mention, as I flipped through the page, that she reads most genres. But those are the ones that she read most frequently. So we have a few authors that are down for the 3 to 5 books or authors that Alice has recently read and enjoyed. So we have Paul Tremblay, who is a horror, sci-fi, and dark fantasy author. Alice really liked the good, unsettling atmosphere that he put in his novel that Alice read. We also have Jane Harper, who's a mystery suspense thriller author. Alice said is a newish writer of mystery set in Australia, so we have things outside of the United States. Alice liked the great description of the scenery and landscape without being overly descriptive. We also have Anthony Horowitz, who is another mystery suspense author. Alice really liked the contemporary stuff, even though Alice hasn't read his Sherlock Holmes stuff yet, which I believe is called The House of Silk. Alice really liked the different books that she has read by him, and so I'm kind of interested as well. There's a lot of things about discovering a series of unfortunate events and solving puzzles to the mystery, so that's really nice. We also have this other author, which I'm going to pronounce slowly so I say the author's name correctly, Keigo Higashino. It's a book called Newcomer that is set in Tokyo, and it's called that because there's a newcomer detective, kind of a pun there, who uses his skills to solve a bunch of little mysteries leading up to the bigger mystery. And Alice said it was actually heartwarming, so I'm kind of interested in it myself. Okay, moving on, we have 4 movies that are listed here. Alice said they had no time for watching television, so we have movies instead. We have 2 Star Wars movies, which is Star Wars A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. We also have Clue, which is, I believe, the 1985 version. We have a Sherlock Holmes movie that was released in 2009 that starred the Robbie Downey Jr., who is also Iron Man, if you do not know. We have a few things about the favorite leisure activities and pastimes. So Alice says that whenever they do have leisure time, they accomplish with multitasking. So they listen to audiobooks while working or mending clothes. Number 2, they read obsessively at the end of the semester. So they need some downtime or escape. And sometimes Alice does jigsaw puzzles. So audiobooks are really helpful during this time. Sometimes they do crossword puzzles, New York Times word puzzles, and sometimes they do needlepoint and crocheting, which is pretty cool. So they usually do small projects in the timeline. So when they do hobbies, they prefer things with tangible products, so like needlepoint, the crocheting, and hobbies that improve their skills, so listening to audiobooks in different languages, and hobbies that they don't have to do in a social setting, which is also cute to know. Moving on, so as I flip the page, so we are going to go over this part where Alice described about some titles, genres, authors that they did not enjoy. We'll describe that more with my overall thoughts since Alice wrote a pretty good description here. So we'll just go over that later. So the format that they frequently use when reading is ebook and audio ebook. And they use their public library's Overdrive subscription. Alice said that they tried Hoopla. I don't know who else has tried Hoopla. Please let me know. But they found their collection more limited, so whatever the library has is what they use. In the last portion where it just says, please share anything else you wish for us to know about your reading preferences, especially anything you would like to avoid or any subject you would like to explore. Alice said that they tried to write a list of books that they've read and listened to based on a reader's advisory session, and that didn't really work. So Alice said that when they read fiction, I'm reading it, quote, for the journey, rather than to remember anything or things to think about. I'm reading it to have an experience outside of my own experience, end quote, which is key when we have to do our suggestions later on. Now let's go over the main highlights that are filled out in this form and let us discuss. I noticed a lot of books or authors that Alice mentioned are mystery, suspense, thriller type of books, kind of a whodunit atmosphere, with movies being adventurous with plot twists here and there, alongside with characters that are independent, charismatic, and almost like the hero that saves the day type of vibe. Side note, Star Wars is also my favorite franchise too. I do wonder if we can add a bit of sci-fi into our choices. Alice did say she read most genres, so maybe a little sci-fi or something adventurous can come along with mixing it up with the main genres that she jotted down. We do have romance checked off, so that can be something that could be an added component to the story of the main genre, like let's say mystery or thriller. So that could be something that we can think about. We should also not shy away from that either. Like let's say from the Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. from 2009 that has adventure, action, with a bit of comedic relief here and there. One disadvantage of this is wondering why Alice picked Star Wars. Was this something from childhood nostalgia, the genre, the story, or certain characters like Luke? Han, Leia, heck, maybe even C-3PO or R2-D2. Who knows? I wish I could talk to Alice and discuss further in depth about that, since that's a bit different than the rest of the books or authors or the other 2 movies in that list. It's fascinating though. One advantage of this is that we can use that to kind of add in a new genre that could be mixed, like a subgenre. So that creates a little spark of ideas. Another advantage of the form is that it talked about more how Alice likes to do audiobooks due to her multitasking. I do like how she describes her pastime and leisure activities. By the way, crocheting is something I wish to learn. I give props to everyone who knows how to do it and can easily make something amazing. That's awesome. Kudos to you guys that are out there who are listening to this. Though she says that she does not have a lot of time, she still gives us a glimpse of when she does. Audiobooks are key for her to do some puzzles, as she mentioned, or doing anything that is tangible, like the crocheting or needlepoint that we talked about. She does mention that she listens to audiobooks to improve her skills, like in a different language. So we have 2 authors that are seemingly to set in a different country. So we have one in Tokyo and one in Australia. So I wonder if she's interested in a story with a non-English dialect here and there, or she wants to read a book that might be easier to understand in a different language. So it's a bit hard to tell since she did not go further deeper into detail about that, which could be a slight disadvantage. However, this can be something that can be future explored in our suggestions. So maybe we can have characters that are diverse, or maybe another story that is set in a different country that will have non-English dialect here and there. A huge advantage I think about filling out the form is that you can explain as much as you want in a certain section that you may feel like you want to say, or really describe in order for the other person, like me, to fully understand. Here, Alice began to describe things that she does not like or not necessarily align with her. This helps us further to understand her as a reader and what to look out for when it comes to our suggestions in the future. What we got to know is that she does not read literary fiction, or rather is more a plot-driven reader. We should not lean into super heavy, emotional, or sad works. I mean, it can have corporations maybe as the story moves on, but there still needs to be some entertainment or an uplifting component, as she stated. This is something to also look out for with our suggestion, possibly see if our tools will use that will describe any trigger warnings, or maybe any reviewers that will describe how the tone of the book is. We know a few authors that Alice discussed in one portion of the form about what she didn't want to see or dislike. So we have Peter Ackroyd, China Neemill, Ruth Ware, Atrio Perez Vete, Louise Penny, and Tammy Hogue. Now, if you like any of these authors, that is great. Maybe you can tell us why, or maybe if you agree with Alice, that is totally valid too. Again, this is all Alice's opinion, so let's all be respectful. And by the way, these are the authors that I felt that Alice described a lot more in detail and had something that we can kind of compare and contrast with what she said earlier in the form. So first we have Peter Ackroyd, that there was probably too much description and heavy setting dependence. So maybe we'll find something that's not so heavy in world building or overly descriptive. Like, you know how sometimes books, some authors write a subject over 4 pages or just as long as that, and it's still on that same subject or setting. So maybe we can just find something that there's a balance where it describes the setting or scenery alongside with the plot of the story itself, like the author that Alice mentioned earlier, which is Jane Harper. So we have also China Neemill, which is focused around characters, which is mindful in terms how character development is. Alice is not a fan of having too much sex, violence, or swearing, nor reading an anti-hero, which I know a lot of us like reading anti-heroes, but not a lot of us do. Similarly with Ruth Ware and Antonio Perez Vete, where there was a lot of emphasis on characters doing excessive drinking or too much sexing. So we have to make sure like there's trigger warnings on that, and if there's any reviews, that some type of content is described in those reviews. So authors Louise Penny and Tammy Hogue seemed to make a positive reaction with Alice, even though they were in this part of the form with some flaws, which can happen when we read. You know, we may like some things and other aspects not so much. That can make a huge impact. So with Louise Penny, it was all about characters and a small community alongside with the mystery elements. Since Louise Penny is a mystery thriller author, the only thing that Alice didn't like was that the main character turned into a villain, which made Alice feel betrayed. Which I totally get that. You know, one common character I can think of is Game of Thrones with Daenerys Targaryen in the show. Like, 1 minute we follow through all of her journey, and then next thing you know, the last season happened, and then Daenerys' hero journey arc just went down the drain. So reading a character that you once thought was one thing then turned into another unexpectedly can certainly really feel that way. So sorry, Alice, that you got to experience that. And then we have Tammy Hogue, which is also another thriller romance author. So we got romance in the mix. And though Alice stated that the main character was acting inconsistently, she was still reading it. I wish we could ask why, though. Like, was it the writing style? Was it the plot of the story? Since Alice kind of sounded a bit surprised that she was still reading this novel despite noticing this character flaw. We can probably suggest another Tammy Hogue story with the reaction that Alice had. And as of recording this, Tammy Hogue does have a newest novel called Bad Liar that may align with Alice. I mean, this is not a suggestion, this is something to keep in mind, but that is something interesting to kind of see. And a slight disadvantage on the form as well that we don't have a way to ask Alice, why did you like that story? Even though the character acted that way. But let us move on. So those notable authors, genres, and writing styles / stories are key when it comes to further understanding our reader. It allows them to speak freely on what they like and don't like. That's what we want to hear, and for it to truly be an experience. It allows them to relive back on those authors and titles, as well as what they did enjoy and what they hope to achieve in the future with their next book. We also need to keep in mind what Alice said at the end of the form, which is the main reason why we're here today. Again, she stated, quote, "I'm ready for it," meaning the story, to have an experience outside of my own experience, end quote. All these books and genres have this one thing in common, an experience. So even if we stick with the thriller mystery novel or add in a mixed genre with sci-fi, with mystery elements or romance, they should all have Alice feel that she is experiencing that story in that moment. That also goes with the format as well, which is important too for how we all experience our reading. Alice again jolted down the ebook and e-audiobook, so it's important that we look for books that are available in that format and possibly see if we can find some reviews that do talk more about the audiobooks. As mentioned earlier, she listens to audiobooks while doing something. So we should find a book that not only will give her an experience, but while doing something that will keep her engaged in the story and continuing her activities. I know when there's a good audiobook, that makes the stories 10 times more better. The one that I can think on the top of my head is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Oh my gosh, that story in that audiobook transcended the book by 10 times by 11, like a million. So we should also see if the books will be available in the public library's overdrive. And accessibility is also important to that experience. You know, if we cannot get access to the books or stories that we want, you know, that doesn't make the experience any more fun either. Now let's go on to the next section of this podcast, which we talk about our tools that we're going to use for our suggestions when we get to that point. So here, again, we're not going to talk about what books we're going to suggest or anything. This is something to get us started and for you to look into as well if you're looking for new tools to use. Some of them you may recognize, others you may not. So I hope this serves as an educational purpose as well. We are just listing the ones for now. This may change later depending on what we find or something else. So, number one, my main source for looking for books reviews and something that is free and accessible to all is, of course, Goodreads. This is a social cataloging website and an app that you can download on your phone or tablet. I believe maybe Kindle, I'm not sure. So for users to search books, reviews, quotations, for users to create free accounts that you can generate your own library catalogs, trackers, and to write your own reviews as well. So Goodreads can help us get us started to see the star rating of the books from other readers. We can also take a look at the made-up lists that are on the website, what books are on certain genres, or other recommendations that Goodreads provides. If we find something on Goodreads, we can always follow up with our other tools as well. I always like Goodreads. It's a quick, easy way to look up a book, to get the summary of the book. It's a great thing. If you don't have Goodreads, I highly recommend you to go look into it. There is one database that I think that will be proven useful when searching for books for any reader. And if you have access, let's say as a student or a faculty or a librarian, please do use them and check to see if you have access. So one is Novelist. So Novelist is a database tool from EBSCO Information Services that can be useful for our search. And this is specifically for readers, advisor/experience. Now, you may need to have access for this database, but if you are a student, like let's say at a university or college, or a professor or teacher, or at a librarian, this can definitely help here. What I like about this database is that it does have recommended readers lists that may help for finding similar entertainment leisures for Alice, as well as genre recommendations. We can also search up books or authors that Alice mentioned in our form into the search and be specific with our search fields or limitations. So let's say I search under the author Jane Harper as an example. Novelist will show me a list of her books, and down below of her books will be options to find similar to Jane Harper's novels or authors that are similar to her. So this can be similar with our searching with our genres. So I say it's a good starting point, and I feel like it's a good database to kind of get things going, especially if you're at a university and you need to use, a good primary source and a reputable source. This could be a good option as well. Here I have at least 2 newspapers and magazines and newsletters that can provide us book reviews and listing recommendations. So the first one is Publishers Weekly. For us librarians or anyone, I think anyone should read this. Publishers Weekly is a great way to find reviews about books that are recent books or some older titles. This can be a way to help us understand the books that we may be interested in, to see if there's any trigger warnings or anything of that nature. Publishers Weekly also has other columns like author interviews, even podcasts with various topics. It's really great. I highly recommend it. If you have not gone, check it out. This is mostly a review and a book publisher related magazine. However, it's a great way to find books from different genres and to see what is happening in the publishing world. It's a free newsletter, so anyone can go sign up. Go sign up. Do it. The next one, we have Kirkus Reviews. So Kirkus Reviews is also similar to Publishers Weekly, where it has book reviews, book lists, podcasts. You can see features like awards or book-related news, and even things like advice for writers, which is also really great. It's a great resource to have as a reader, librarian, or whoever you are. For this, of course, we will use it to discover books and read reviews if the books have reviews. There's a spectrum of genres like thriller, mystery, romance, science fiction, and so much more. We can also limit sources by subgenres and ratings, but we will explore this further when we're actually searching for our recommendations. But Kirkus Reviews you can follow on social media, but for this you do have to pay a fee for the subscription, so keep that in mind. So the last 2 search tools that I think we should not put in the back burner are Reddit and Amazon. So these are sub-websites. I call them my sub-websites. So I know Amazon may seem like an odd choice or something you may think that is not a good way to find books. Although, I would like to think the opposite. There is a list of books and suggestions that Amazon can provide alongside with reviews that customers do, and of course Amazon has their own reviewers when reading the books. It's also a great way to find if certain books are available in ebook format, like in Kindle. So we can check to see if there's other places like the library or whatnot that may have that ebook version. Amazon does provide their own, again, their book reviews and other listings to see what is trending among readers and editors' radar. And they have their own search advanced tool, so that can help us with searching our books. Lastly is Reddit. So if you don't know what Reddit is, it's a social news content rating and forum social network that users can create, post, and threads. Posts are organized by subject and subreddits, which are made under the initial posting. It's a great place to find a network of people who are in the same community as you, whether that be hobbies, occupation, identity, etc. There are a lot of subreddits that are about book genres, book recommendations, librarians, and so much more. The list can continue. But some people may use Reddit since it could be a great way to have a good perspective from a person in your same community or the same interests as you. So Reddit might not be the first place that someone would think of when trying to find a book. But sometimes Reddit can be super useful, and it can find a great way to find community and to really talk about something that you're enjoying as well. So I really like to keep an open mind as well when using Reddit. Now, I did mention earlier in this episode that we will discuss about the form that we use today, and we were going to reflect on it a bit. I do at least have 2 formats that we'll use to compare and contrast, possibly inspiration for the new upcoming forms that the library can do in the future. Overall, with this form that Alice used and that we talked about today, I think it's a great starting point to creating a reader's advisory / experience online form. We have the basics down. Picking down the genres, listing a few books or authors you enjoy or read and explanations on why, listing a few other leisure times and entertainment, talking about your hobbies, dislikes from other books or authors, formats, etc. Those are great. And I think it does provide also a guidance too on when you're actually doing an in-person reader's advisor on, what do you want to discuss about? And also the form allows readers to freely express as much as they want. This could possibly hinder some responses on not having a lot of detail or writing in as much on some parts of the form too. But I do like how this form tells readers to be as detailed as possible. And it gives us time to discuss, to kind of brainstorm, just like right now. The 2 forms that we will use to compare and contrast are Williamsburg Regional Library's form, which is called Looking for a Good Book, and Brooklyn Public Library's form, which is called Brooklyn Book Match. On the form, it is spelled BKLYN, just in case you want to look it up. I feel like we can learn a lot from other libraries and to see how we can incorporate on our own practices. The reason why I picked these 2 forms is because I believe that there are positives and shortcomings when it comes to the forms in relation to ours. So let's start off with the Williamsburg Regional Library's form, which is again called Looking for a Good Book. Now, what I do enjoy right away from this form is that there are lots of categories and subcategories that are in this form, and that you have the option to pick several based on a rating scale. This can be super beneficial for a large library that needs information that can be easily analyzed. However, I can see how this may be overwhelming with trying to pick every multiple choice option in the main categories. It may feel a little bit overwhelming. And it may not give the reader the ability to fully explain their story, feelings, or anything about themselves as a reader. It can feel like it's filling out a form rather than a reading experience. I feel that our current form can have a benefit from at least having some incorporations of the multiple choice option ranking, but only for a few, while others can be still written down by the Patreon, so that way we can still understand their experience as a reader. The good multiple choice option ranking that I think would be good for some categories can be genre / formats, the peeves and pleasures that can change to trigger warnings or dislikes, and possibly even the content interests. But I would like to think that content interests, that could be a free response text box, since so many interests cannot be listed, or allow the readers to explain why they like certain content interests, Another place I feel like we can change it up to our form is the tone / style / mood. That part I feel can be changed into a free response where patrons can describe what they want. That gives an idea of why they want that type of experience again, or what they might enjoy rather than dislike. I also feel like having a multiple choice ranking option may be slightly different. Maybe instead of having interested, avoid, or no, we can add a middle ground where it could be somewhere in the lines of, let's say, quote, open, where libraries can know that readers are open to different options and possibly go out of their comfort zone if they want to. So there is, the good part is the multiple choice. That is great. That we don't have a lot of in our current form. However, having too much can feel like it's a survey. That's not giving it an experience. That's just giving out another library survey format. So I feel like having a balance of text and a multiple choice can be really beneficial. So let's move over onto the Brooklyn Public Library's book match form. So now I like how this form is on the shorter side and not feel like one like a survey, okay? The other one felt it was a little bit longer because of those multiple choice options, but this one is shorter, kind of like ours. It's similar to the one that we have now where we ask questions and patrons can explain as much as they want. I do feel, though, unlike our form, the multiple choice questions are at the bottom. They're not at the top. I feel like having the questions be right away an answer you have to think about and type it out can be a bit daunting, and sometimes patrons or folks want to answer questions right away. Then have a free response questions to be last, so that way they can think about it, ponder a little bit, give time to give a good response. I feel like that is what is good about our form, to have an easy question first, then slowly build up to the more detailed questions. I feel our questions and the Brooklyn Public Library's questions are the same. I do not feel that there's anything wrong with that. However, I do see some answers of certain questions that may overlap. So the first question is asking about what reading recommendations the patron is looking for, describing the titles, authors, genres, or other types of books that they may enjoy and why. Well, the second question asks, I guess in a sense, again, to list to 1 to 3 books that they recently read and enjoy. Now, it could not be an overlap, but I feel like if the patron inputs the second question to the first one, they already, in a sense, answered the question already. I do feel like input of content warnings that a patron would like to know or maybe avoid, and it's a free response. I think that's something we should add into our new form, and I feel like that's something that all forms should have, because a lot of people have trigger warnings or content that they do not want to have, and that's just not under dislikes. That could be something that's very specific too. I do think that they only have 2, even though there's 3 that one's aimed specifically for their library. Multiple choice responses may not encapsulate other questions that can be answered, almost similar to ours. I feel like we should also input more multiple choice responses to have readers describe more about themselves and what experience they would like to have, that are easy, that don't need a lot of detail. I think with our form, by noticing it on both forms, is that we should ask a demographic question, at least like an age range, to see if they are requesting it for themselves, a child, or for someone else too, because a lot of people want to ask things for their friends or for their family members or for someone that they care about. It's not essentially about them. They just want other people to have an experience, and they want to know what a librarian may suggest. We may not want to do an overall demographic identity in case of confidentiality, but it's something to keep in mind, because I know sometimes libraries, they have to do that for analytical purposes and, assessments. But, for in this case, maybe we should lean off against that. So, we're at the end of our podcast episode. Hooray! Yay! And my cat Gracie is so excited. She is sleeping that whole entire time. That is who is the main art of this podcast, by the way. Thank you so much for joining me today on this episode. I really hope this was fun and exciting. And I hope, Alice, you had fun too if you're listening to this. I hope this gives a better understanding of who you are as a reader. And I cannot wait to go into research for your future books that you may listen to and read. It's great to get to know you, Alice, and it's great for you guys to listen in too and to follow along. You can also try to see if you can find something for Alice as a fun way to practice your reading experience journey. Or if you're interested in what Alice mentioned, you can freely look it up. This is a great way to connect with each other as readers, as librarians, just the bookish community. This is a great way to do that. And I hope you are staying safe out there. What am I currently reading right now? I'm reading Indenturary. This is a fantasy novel. This is a reread, by the way. So I'm opening the book. I forgot what page I'm in. By the way, the author is Zordada Cordova. I love her. She's really awesome. I'm on page 265. So this is a YA fantasy novel. It's a great story. It's about a girl who's learning her magic again. She can steal memories, and it's about her going back into this kingdom where she escaped from, and she's trying to start a whole rebellion again. It's really fascinating. So yeah, that is great. But the last book I read is called The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, a cozy fantasy romance read. Highly recommend. So yeah, but also let me know what you're currently reading, what's going on in your bookish world or library. I would like to know. But again, I am the Cozy Librarian Gal, also known as Christina. I hope you have a great, wherever you are, time zone. And please stay bookish, relax, have a cup of refreshing tea, coffee, water, whatever you have, and continue on your reading journey. All right, Safe wishes out there. Bye-bye.